To gate or not to gate? That's the question when it comes to software downloads or any sort of content on your website. When we talk about from an open source perspective, many of you may already have quote unquote gated content, and many of you may not. What is gated content? Gated content is the idea that you are taking some sort of article, some sort of blog, video, or even a download and putting it behind a login. In order to get access to whatever that asset is, you have to log in and you have to provide your details. Why is this something that is a debate? Why would people do it? Well, there is a great amount of pressure from a standard marketing and sales process that they want the names and details of those who are downloading and using, their software. They want to be able to feed that into the marketing engine, the growth engine, and be able to understand which companies, which users are downloading, and that will be fed into a lead scoring system. The lead scoring system will then dictate which leads are higher quality, which ones have a better opportunity to potentially become customers. In the open source space, this has long been a debate. Open source has been provided freely through many different distribution channels, many different opportunities for you to go download your software without providing any detail, which means that there is a black hole, a missing chunk of potential leads, of potential opportunities for the sales and marketing team to start to nurture people to eventually become customers. In the case of open source software, it is not as straightforward as just saying, let's put up a login page, because part of the challenge with that is a lot of software that you're downloading doesn't come from someplace that the company ultimately controls. There are a certain number of downloads that are going to come directly to your website. You're going to go in, you're going to say, download this software, then you're going to follow a link, you're going to do it. But then there are a lot more that are going to go through third-party Linux repositories, maybe container registries, maybe GitHub repositories, all these different places where you can get your software. So how do you effectively gate all those places? And the answer is, in a lot of cases, you can't, especially those that are part of a built-in CI/CD pipeline. If your repositories that you're pulling data or your software from are one of these third-party channels, they might not allow logins. So how do you collect that information? And even if they do allow logins, the repository is going to be who keeps that data, and it's not going to be accessible to you. This is one of the reasons why we created Scarf, of course. So Scarf is designed to sit in between the end user and the repository, and then simply redirect things. And then it collects information, and it collects that metadata, and then it translates that metadata into profiles on companies that are using your software. This is actually a tried and true tactic. When you look at other systems to collect leads and to build and help the sales and marketing process, one of the classic use cases for this type of software is in the anonymous web traffic. If you go out there and you take a look, there's a lot of companies that claim to be able to, and do, provide leads from your anonymous web traffic. Somebody browses the web, somebody looks around, they say like, oh, look at this is interesting, but they never log in anywhere. It's difficult to say who that person is. And so there are services that will take the metadata that the breadcrumbs that they left behind on the website, and translate that into an actual user or an actual company, more likely a company than a user. They'll use either tracking pixels, or they'll use cookies, or they might use some other mechanisms that are out there to translate that traffic. And from there, they'll provide you with a list of companies, sometimes even leads, and then sales can go off and do what they need to do to focus on those. But in the open source space, because you don't have the same level of anonymous tracking, it has become difficult. Again, this is where Scarf kind of fits in. It fits the bill where it sits as a gateway in front of your download channels, whether they are third party or not. And as people go and collect the software, download the software, you can collect the information, and it will show up and give you a profile of who your downloaders are and who's actually using your software. What are the pros and cons of gating your content or your downloads? Well, some pros are, number one, you'll actually get the names of and identifying information of people who are downloading. So if you are looking for a specific person who is downloading and using your software, you can get that with a gated methodology. So you will collect that. Also, you can plug this into existing lead scoring systems. So if that same user is also registering for your website, they're registering for webinars, maybe they're attending events, you can build the breadcrumb and build up an entire profile on that specific person. And that can be used in your sales and marketing funnels. Both are reasonable things, and I think that those are the primary reasons why you would consider gating content. When we talk about the negatives, especially in the open source space, the likelihood that you're going to get an actual user who's signing up is not a guarantee. So a lot of people who use anonymous or even spam email accounts, I know that I have an email account that is specifically for everything that I sign up for that I never look at. So you're going to run into not necessarily getting the information that you want. So you're going to get a lot of false information when you do gate your content or your downloads. You're also going to see that not only do you get that false information, but you're going to see that some people will go and they won't download. They'll go to the download page, they want to download, but they will go find an alternative pathway that doesn't require the login. In the open source space, there are many different ways to install open source software, from competitors to third-party repositories to mirrored sites. All of these different places are going to have the same software that you provide in many cases, and so people are just going to go grab it from somewhere else. And so you're going to be limiting the effectiveness of what you're trying to do in the gated. So be mindful of that as well. So, to gate or not to gate? If that's the question, in my estimation, the answer is don't gate. It's very difficult in the open source space to gate all of the different places that you can download software from. So if you're only gating 1 out of 5 potential channels, you're only going to get a little bit of the value. Instead, there are other methods and other tools that you can use to get the information you need. Realistically, what you're looking for who is using your software, and are they potentially a viable customer? Take a look at some of the services that are out there. Take a look at services like Scarf in order to do download metrics, or some of the other services out there to do web analytics if you're also just looking at who's browsing your website or looking at your download pages. Either one is going to provide you with a viable place to start gathering leads without necessarily impacting your end users, which is always the goal.